So a lot of the houses around here, a lot of the ones we looked at, have these gates that are a bit peculiar in a way. They have these extra gates on the front door, but they're actually quite handy. They're handy for us because we've got the 2 dogs, so it means you can shut them in, which is quite handy. You can leave this shut, open the door, and when people come to the door, it means the dogs can't jump out. And they're obviously a traditional thing that you get in this area. But as you can probably see, this one's pretty rotten. You can see we've lost the bottom of that altogether, and that tenon there departed from that mortise some time ago, and then they put some pretty rough and ready mending plates on, which, fair enough, they've held the thing together. But yeah, I think we can probably improve on this. You can see as well the if I could get the angle of the camera right, you can see the latch here is completely dropped, so it should sit there. So that bar there should be pretty much level, and at the moment it's way uphill because the whole thing's dropped down to there. So you have to physically lift the whole thing up to shut it, so it doesn't just latch itself, which would be nice. So anyway, simple enough project to make. So we'll head round to the workshop and we'll have a look at how I plan to get the new gate done. At first glance, probably doesn't look much like the gate that we were just looking at, but I think it was the backs. It's all tongue and grooves. You can see it. At one time it slotted together. But anyway, I think it's the back of an old wardrobe, one of the wardrobes that we would have dragged out of the house when we first came here. All of the wood here, pretty much, that's old, has got beetle damage. I don't know how well you can see, but there's little exit holes here. Now, there won't be any live worm in this, any live beetle larvae in it. I mean, it's dry, it's old, they've long gone, but it's still not really what we want to see on the gate. So although on the face of it I've got more than enough wood here, I've got to kind of figure out which bits I can use to avoid at least most of the beetle holes. And then this bit here, you can see, probably see the bottom of that's obviously had it, so I don't want to use that. But if I slice that off kind of there, get rid of that bit there, actually the rest of this board is completely clear, and we're aiming for about 2 inches wide, so I should be able to get 4. Yeah, it's like a banana. A lot of it is, but it doesn't really matter because I'm only going to cut it down. I'll soon plane that flat. I'll cut them up and plane them off, see what the wood comes out like, and then I've got various bits of oak kicking about that I can probably make the other bits from. So we'll see how well they match. I mean, I'm not too fussy, but it'd be nice for them to be fairly close. So I'll get these cut up and then get them planed off and we'll see what we're dealing with. Well, you can see that, but the wood inside doesn't look much when you look at the edge or the face, but once you get into it, it really is, it's lovely. It's not the easiest stuff in the world to work with because it's so dry and old, but worth it. So I'll get that cut down, then plane it off flat, take that belly out there, take that dip out of there, and then I can square it off. I don't want to go mad. It's it's a garden gate, but I want it reasonably square. Plus, I think I'm gonna have to find some thicker stock to do the posts, and obviously that means I'm going to be well, not on these bits, but I'm going to be making some mortise and tenon joints, so life's so much easier when you start with the square. Right. Yeah, I was saying about the vice earlier. I mentioned in passing that that's another project. Well, the reason is that the bottom of the vice and the bottom of the whole bench was just sat into this, this floor, which is just compressed dirt, and it was actually, I mean, you can see probably here it's been raining, and the damp gets in, blows in through the door, and you've got big doors on here, and it opens up, and it blows in. Whole floor gets wet. The guttering's had it, and we actually tore it off. My dad tore it off because it was actually doing more harm than good, just funneling water in a torrent. So anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying that the bottom of the bench legs rotted out. So I made a pretty rough and ready repair, which you can see there, with a couple of pieces of oak I just chopped out of these old joists. Well, a bit more than joists. The uprights, I think they were. We got quite a bit of this, and it's pretty solid wood, despite some of the outward appearances. So anyway, I chopped a couple of bits out there, planed it off square, and did the legs on that, and then they just sit on a couple more that I've just leveled off, but laid out in there, and just packed out with a few bits of slate and so on to get it level. And it's made the bench, lovely and solid. It doesn't move, but of course the big problem. The vice had a length of bar at the bottom in a hole that the idea is it travels along, and these face vices are great, but if they haven't got that bar, or they haven't got, so newer ones often have like a caliper thing, if they haven't got that, then what happens is when you try and use them, the wood goes in. It's not too bad with thinner bits, but you can see probably even there how much wider the gap is at the top than the bottom. It's what we'd call, it's racked. You can see at the bottom it closes up, and at the top it's open to accommodate whatever you've put in there to hold, which means that the contact point on the between, also, I mean, this is completely chewed up, which makes it even worse, but the contact point is limited. So of course you have to really heave the thing in tight to get it to hold when you want to plane, because planing, if you've done any hand planing, you know that the wood just immediately tries to fly out of the vice. And for these thin bits, they need to be held in the vice. The thicker bits, I sit them on the bench and just use the little knuckle breaker there to stop the wood moving. It does the job for now. It needs a new chop making. The whole bench needs planing off. I've started a little bit. I've flamed a few of the worst offenders. These tenons, the tenons there. I don't know how well you can see that. As you can see, it's a really nicely made old thing. Very solid. But that was sat out about 4 mil, so I planed that off, and this has got a fair old belly in it, so everything rocks on it. But essentially, the top of it is a whopping great slab of oak. I mean, it's what you would, I suppose, refer to as a roubeau style bench, which is a classic French bench. And a lot of these farmhouses that we went to look at, a lot of them had, one of the, from my point of view, fantastic. They have these whopping great old benches in them, and they're great. I mean, you can see in the end there, I hope you can see the kind of, that's a whole, just a centre part of an oak tree. And so it's incredibly solid. I mean, it's going to last 1,000 years looked after, but it does need flattening off. It's got some cracking here that I'm going to put probably some resin in. There's a hole a bit further along where a knot's fallen out. Well, I assume it's a knot that's fallen out. But essentially, it's a lovely thing. It just needs planing, flat and square. So we've got a nice square edge. Make a new chop for the vice, and I've got to come up with something for the bottom. I've seen sort of peg systems, but they're a bit rough and ready. I'd like to get like a collar with ball bearings in, and what that would do is the ball bearings would sit around a piece of steel, so that they would, they would move in and out. The steel would move in and out of the bearings very smoothly, which means you can get a really good fit. And the better the fit, the less racking, which is what we want. And then some nice bits of leather on the face of the vise, and we've got a nice, good gripping vise. Anyway, planing off this board, which will be the first of the 6, was it? Yeah, six upright pieces I'm going to make out of this oak, and then I'll find some other oak to make the other bit. So I'll have a crack at it with the number 5. Yeah, that probably could do with a bit of touching. Candle wax, so all of the planes smooths. Glide across the wood. This is a beautiful plane anyway. Lovely tool to use. About there. That's pretty good. Good. Lovely wood. It's hidden behind the years of grime, cobwebs and dust. So what I'll do now is that side will be pretty straightforward. This side, you can see nice big lump in it there. They weren't too worried about the back of the cupboard, so. Well, that picks up, but there's a bit of tear on the middle there. But where it's obviously the grain goes all the way along here, and there's a little bit rising up there. Which what happens? The plane sort of digs in a bit and kind of rips it. Doesn't matter how sharp your plane is on that sort of plane. So anyway, we'll smooth that with a smoothing plane. I don't know if you can hear that. What I'm really trying to do with this little plane here is take off really thick shavings, because it's so, yeah, the wood's so thick and out of line that the basically converted this. Essentially I got 3 really. And at first glance it's I don't know, it's a bit of an ugly little thing. It's been repaired there, but I kind of love that. It's someone's cared enough about it to get it brazed. It's only an Acorn, which is was effectively a sub-brand of Stanley, like their cheaper range, and it's, you know, the blade was orange and quite pitted, so I cut it back quite a long way, but I've got a reasonable edge on it. The chip breaker could do with a bit more work, but basically I decided to make it into a very aggressive scrub plane, which is great for this, because it takes almost bloody veneers off, and you can see how far out that is from anywhere near straight. I'll smooth that off. We've got a couple of bits still of the number 7's done a pretty good job actually, but you can see there's some pretty rough tear out there. On this side there's a shocking bit there, but I'll go over that later once we're ready to assemble. I'll finish that off. There's no point doing it now because I'll only bash it into something.